Day update. We'll start with the COVID update. We'll hit a few other topics, but the top line on COVID is cases continue to fall at a good rate. Positivity rate continues to fall. Hospitalizations, ICU, and ventilators all declining. Deaths still staying fairly high. We hope that that will follow the rest of the trend shortly. Again, we're also having younger people continue to die almost entirely unvaccinated and preventable. So, Saturday, 3,564 new cases, 32 new deaths, including a 37-year-old woman in Fayette County and a 41-year-old man in Logan County. Sunday, 1,422 new cases, 29 new deaths, including a 31-year-old man in Harlan County. And today, we believe the fewest cases since December, 969 new cases, but still 21 new deaths. They include a 43-year-old man in Carroll County, a 41-year-old man in Harlan County, and a 45-year-old man in Scott County. As of today, our positivity rate now down to 12.74%. Now, that is still really high, but given we were over, 36, 37%, this has been a significant decline, and we are absolutely headed to a much better place. Let's look at the stair stepper chart. This is also good news, except that is from last week. As we wait for it to come in, this is our fourth straight week of declining cases. Lowest number of cases in 2 months, steady decline, and we are now below Delta's peak, though Delta was at the time the most cases we'd seen. Last week we had 25,173 cases. There it is. Again, a really good decline. You see we are headed both in the right direction and at a good pace. We are still one of the higher weeks of the pandemic. And again, what we'd ask is people's patience because in even just a couple of weeks, we look like we would be down at where we started taking off potentially for Omicron. And what we all want to see is for us to get closer to where we were between Alpha and Delta, where we got down to even 1,024 cases in a week. In Delta, we never got all the way down before Omicron took off. So this is really good news. We're heading in the right direction. It looks like we may be able to have a really good spring and summer, and we certainly hope it holds for longer than that. But trying to be patient just in the next couple weeks to where you don't end up catching COVID and we don't end up with things like schools that can't be open for a couple of days because we just weren't patient enough for those next couple weeks to get where we need to be. This is really good news overall. Same thing with positivity rate. Now down, last week was 13.1%. Same trends, same number of weeks declining. Now slightly below where we were in the Delta surge. And again, trend just like cases heading in the same direction at generally the same overall speed. This says we are in a real decline that we expect to continue to decline. Hospitalizations. This is a really exciting chart. There were a couple of days, maybe even a week or two, where it wasn't clear that the slope going down was going to be as severe as the slope going up. We're seeing hospitalizations dramatically fall, though DPH would say there are still a whole lot of people still in the hospital. We're moving in the right direction. ICU, the same. Remember with Omicron, it didn't get as high as with Delta. While it more aggressively spreads, it is less severe in overall disease, especially for those that are vaccinated. Ventilators show the same. Omicron upper respiratory instead of lower respiratory, meaning ventilators aren't needed as often. So it is really good news where the trends are going in COVID. looking like we will be at a much better place, especially by the second week of March. We think we could be all the way through the orange and into the yellow. Could be that we'll be there a little bit earlier. We don't expect the orange to last very long at all. We expect to run through it maybe within a week. So, very excited about where we're going and what that could mean. Not as excited about our vaccination pace slowing down. Now, we were seeing 10,000 plus, 8,000, 9,000 plus vaccinations over a weekend as Omicron was going up. This last weekend, 3,451 Kentuckians choosing to get their first vaccination, 4,032 becoming fully vaccinated, 5,912 getting boosted. We would like to see all of those numbers be a little bit better. The good news, we've never reached zero, right, in any given day on number of Kentuckians getting vaccinated for the first time. It's just our rate has slowed. But, well, this is a point where we slog it out. As long as we're moving forward, we are moving forward. The booster rate, we would like to see improve as well. There's a little complication in those numbers in that you only qualify, within those weeks after you get your second shot. So not everybody is on that same pace. We've had some positive changes in our overall demographics that we show by age. We are still at 64% of every man, woman, and child in Kentucky that's gotten at least one shot. That makes this, I think, the quickest, most successful vaccination against a new virus in human history. It's just the adversary is really something, and it takes that much more. We've now gone up a point in total percentage vaccinated for those that are eligible, 5 and up. Now it's 69%. Think about that. That is really incredible. Less than a year overall since vaccines became readily available, much less time since kids 16 and under were eligible, much less time than that. Kids 5 to 11 were eligible, and we're still at almost 70% of everybody who can get a shot has gotten it. I hope that drowns out a lot of the noise when people try to claim two sides. This is the vast majority of Kentuckians. 76% of all Kentuckians that can make their own healthcare decisions have chosen to get vaccinated. This shows where people are doing the right things, sacrificing for each other. We ought to be proud of it. We just need to keep going. The other change is a really important change. We went up a point in 75 years and up, the most vulnerable group of Kentuckians. Every time we can increase a percentage point there, it is a big win. They moved from 92 to 93% of all Kentuckians 75 and up have been vaccinated. Everything else the same. I just want to point something out. A lot of schools looking at what they're going to do on masking right now. And I get that. We're moving to a much better place. I absolutely get it. Two things I hope that superintendents and others will look at. Number one is we're still above 12% in the positivity rate. We're still 25,000 plus cases in a week. And pretty much anywhere in school, elementary to high school, we're less than half of the students who would be there vaccinated. We're less than a quarter in elementary school. We're less than half in middle school, and we're just barely over a half in high school. So those are the things that everybody's got to look at and that each district can look at. It's the prevalence of the disease. Still high, but really moving in the right direction. It's a good thing. Level of vaccinations, we're doing a little bit better, but the numbers on those school-age kids aren't moving nearly as much as they could or they should. But still, 2,877,881 Kentuckians have now at least gotten their first shot. So a lot to be grateful for in terms of where COVID is going, and a lot to be sad about in the losses that we sustained almost 2 years in. But again, I just say, everybody be patient, hold on. Even in just a couple weeks, I think we're going to be in a really good place. And as long as we don't have another variant that creates a new surge, I think we're headed to a really good place. And that feels pretty good to report. All right, on a little tougher news on our tornadoes that hit Western Kentucky. Department of Public Health has confirmed an increased death toll, which I'll explain in a minute, with now 80 Kentuckians lost in those tornadoes. The two new Kentuckians consist of Jessica, of a 33-year-old woman who was from Mayfield, who was in the hospital for a significant period of time and finally died of her injuries, as well as her, at that point, unborn child who was born, lasted 6 days, passed away. And this is, again, a little bit a few months ago on the child itself, but now being updated on those numbers. Really hard loss. Yet another tough toll from the most devastating weather event that we have ever experienced. To their family, I know you've already grieved for that infant and now are grieving for her mother. We grieve with you. We care about you. We're also seeing a lot of increased activity, which you'll see throughout these counties on moving our survivors from emergency sheltering into what I would call intermediate housing. So we still have a number of our tornado survivors in what we term as emergency sheltering, which is in hotels and state park lodges. And that's when we're providing multiple needs, right? Especially you think in the first month, or really now we've even gone past 2 after the event itself. That's shelter, that's 3 meals a day. Now we're moving to the point where we're moving people from that emergency sheltering into travel trailers or some of the state park cottages, where those survivors start taking on more of their own needs like food as we move forward. It's getting people back into the flow of not just self-sufficiency, but getting back and getting closer to being in their homes, back in their lives. Again, this is a step where it's always a challenge as we move through, but we want to get people built back up to where they were pre-tornado or even better. So we're going to have a whole lot of movement over the next couple weeks of first consolidating the state parks. We're moving everybody out of Barkley into other parks, moving as many people out of the lodges so we can also get ready for the impact those make on the local economies, which they really need after an event like this, and into more self-sufficient housing. But remember, we have all the other services from pandemic, EBT, and other assistance on food to unemployment to so many other options that are there. It's a step that's taken after every disaster. That's where we are in this one. So to help with that, and to help with those that may be with relatives but will develop sheltering needs, we're launching a new website for tornado survivors to identify their needs. The page will connect survivors to wraparound services from state and nonprofit organizations. It'll connect individuals to our Commonwealth Sheltering Program if they need medium-term housing during the recovery process. One of the reasons we've had to launch this is using FEMA's information, trying to contact people to move them into travel trailers. People aren't picking up. We'll spend all day long calling the cell phones that people left with FEMA, and not enough of them are picking up. So this is an option for people to directly register with us, where we know we don't want to call it the needle in the haystack, but those who are ready, to answer the call and to therefore be able to be more efficient in getting people in those travel trailers. Western Kentucky families can access the site by visiting the site on the screen, and once you're there, clicking register. Survivors will receive a confirmation email and reply within 5 business days. We got flyers going out to those currently housed in the state parks or through Red Cross hotels. Again, it's never easy to move in the next step towards getting people back. That's what we're doing now. We need people to pick up their phones so that we can provide them one of these beautiful travel trailers or other options. And then we've got some folks that when we go out, which we have to do, and look at their homes or where their homes were from the tornado, some just have minor damage. Maybe they didn't have utilities that were up and they're now back up. And so there are some we're going to have to ask to move back into their homes with the repairs that are needed. Let's remember the deadline to apply for FEMA assistance is March the 14th, 2022. They originally set the new deadline on a Sunday. This moved it to a Monday. To qualify for so much, you got to go through this process. So please do it. One piece of news that's out there on the international side that I know we've all been worried about, as unsettling um, as just about anything that most of us experienced, is what's going on with Russia and the Ukraine right now. There have been federal government warnings that have been released as tensions have grown higher. Companies across the U.S. have been encouraged to increase their cyber defenses, especially those handling critical infrastructure like power and water. Concerns have also been shared that a skirmish could cause increased prices on corn and wheat, as well as energy prices and gasoline. While this would likely be short term, certainly actions by Russia could cause those things to occur. I want to emphasize that this is a moment where we are Americans, where we shouldn't be looking to gain an advantage, D versus R or red versus blue, or worry about any election. On the international stage, we have to be Americans, because while we fought a whole lot with each other in the last couple of years, there are real enemies out there that hate us, that try to turn us against each other, and that launch different attacks and cyber attacks every single day against this country. We have too many people trying to tear us down for us to do it to each other. And certainly in this instance, with what is going on between Russia and the Ukraine, it's got to be one America, one, as strong as we have ever been and ready to meet whatever challenges come in front of us. That's our patriotic duty, and I hope it doesn't take something like this to remind us of it. This is not a time to try to argue with our neighbors or take advantage of a crisis for political opportunism. Now's the time to be good Americans. And finally, because I can't get through one of these without talking about the weather, Kentucky is expected to receive multiple rounds of heavy rain this week, with the first round forecast to begin tonight, continuing all the way through Tuesday. Then it's expected to again start Wednesday night and continue through Friday. Heaviest rainfall is expected Tuesday, 1 to 3 inches of rain possible. A flood watch has been identified for the entire Commonwealth, and it highlights the potential for excessive rainfall and flooding issues, especially during the day tomorrow, Tuesday. There's also a slight risk for severe weather across western and south central Kentucky for Tuesday afternoon, which you see on the screen. A few strong storms are possible, with heavy rainfall and damaging wind gusts as the most likely hazards. An isolated tornado should not be ruled out. Minor flooding issues may arise across river basins slightly east of Owensboro and down to Paducah, which is what you see in red. So make sure you follow the weather. We'll try to put out updates, but once again, severe weather's coming. We're doing our best to make sure you have the information needed to protect yourself. With that, we'll open it up to questions. We'll start with Mike Valenti from WLAX.
I was hoping you could characterize this moment for us. Are we closer to the endemic phase and coming out of the pandemic? And then when you look at all those leading metrics declining, especially cases of positivity rate, how much of that is a reflection of Omicron just running out of people to infect, and then just people having access to these at-home tests and maybe not reporting it?
So the question is, where would I characterize where we are pandemic to endemic? Certainly the trend that we are moving gives us hope that we are moving from pandemic to endemic. Now, when we were declining from Delta, none of us necessarily knew Omicron was going to come and spike the way it did, in the most severe way we have seen during the pandemic. So I think we've got to be humble. This is a virus that for us is still less than 2 years old. It's a 1 in every 100-year pandemic, at least at the moment, that comes to kill as many of us as possible. In the past, I think the Spanish flu was up to 7 years, but they didn't have vaccines and testing and therapeutics and everything we have. What I can say is we are moving the right way, and I hope and I pray we're moving towards endemic. But this is the war of our times. It's killed more people than any 3 wars in Kentucky's history put together, including the world wars. So I pray that it's going towards endemic. We got to be strong enough if it's not. Now, I think there are two reasons that it's getting better. One, the level of people we have vaccinated and boosted, which is a huge help. And second, the number of people that it's infected that have developed at least some form of immunity from having it. Now, that's certainly something I think could move us into an endemic phase, but only if it's big enough and only if the next variant doesn't find a way around it. And those are all questions that we'll see. I don't think at-home tests have the level of impact that we think with people not reporting them. It could have some impact on number of cases, but not on the positivity rate, as those are all just PCR tests anyways, and they give us an overall sample. With that falling at generally the same overall levels as you see, the slope looking the same as cases, I think we are in a real decline, that the trend is as it's displayed on those graphs, and it's really good information. This thing's thrown us a lot of curveballs before. I want us to be hopeful, but I want us to be strong. Tom Latek, Kentucky Today.
Thank you, Governor. I noticed you didn't have the usual slide you do about vaccinated versus unvaccinated people in hospitals and
Right.
ICU and ventilators. I've seen some information from Northern Kentucky, from their health department and from St. Elizabeth, that the numbers that we're used to seeing with a very higher number of cases being unvaccinated is reversed. In the case of just this past week, like 2-to-1 vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Is this just a regional anomaly, or is this a trend that you're seeing elsewhere? And then my second one, if I may,
Sure.
talking about the cybersecurity as the state that
On the cybersecurity side, we do not believe that the state has been hacked by any foreign power at this point. Every day we look at potential breaches. That's people's privacy and information that on a regular basis people either try to get into, and/or it can occur by mistake or by a bug or a glitch in the system. But no, at this point we have no information on an attack by a foreign country. I will say, I anticipate in the future we will learn, or we will be able to confirm and not just suspect that there were foreign powers at work trying to cause problems with our unemployment systems during COVID. And again, it's an attempt to destabilize the United States, to get us to turn on each other, to make it harder to provide for our people. I mean, just the level and the sophistication of the attacks that we saw, large criminal syndicate at least, but we see foreign countries doing these types of things. Trends in hospitals between vaccinated and unvaccinated right now, it's still in the 80% unvaccinated in hospitalization. I think it could be a number of different things at work, but we haven't seen anything to suggest it's anything other than an anomaly at this point. Melissa Patrick, Kentucky Health News.
Hi, Governor. So are you considering changing, you've said you would change the COVID-19 recommendations mid-March, all goes well. Are you thinking about doing it any sooner, especially with the Senate proposing ending the pandemic state of emergency on March 7th?
Well, even if they end the state of emergency, we're still going to provide guidance. And I guess it could be groups trying to make a statement, but we don't have any restrictions, state restrictions left. I mean, none that are required by those out in the state. And we haven't in a long time. I see some other states, California or the rest, and they'll say, we're going to undo the indoor capacity things. And someone will say, well, why isn't Kentucky doing that? And that's just politics. We did that months upon months upon months ago. So regardless of what Senate tries to do with the state of emergency, we're still going to try to provide the best guidance. And I'm also a little concerned that some states aren't going to be publishing COVID information as much as they used to, because if the claim is this is now more of a personal responsibility to decide your risk level, then you need as much information out there as possible to do so, right? What's the level in your community? What's the level in your state? What's the level in your children's school district or schools? So, I think it's going to be even more important going forward if there are going to be fewer actions out there by different entities or employers, that we have the very best guidance we can. So I fully anticipate that we would have new guidance by the 14th. Is it possible that our trends are going so well we could reach there earlier? Sure. I don't know if our guidance would be ready, but we could reach where we hope to be on the 14th a week earlier. And that doesn't have anything to do with a Senate resolution. It has to do with how quickly we're declining. There's a period last week where we were going down almost 1 percentage point in positivity a day. Over the weekend, that slowed down a little bit to really every 2 days. So listen, Melissa, it would be wonderful if we get through the orange and into the yellow a week earlier. It'd be wonderful if we do it 2 weeks earlier. The best prediction we can make right now is March the 14th. Jeremy Toombs, WKYT.
Thank you, Governor. You had mentioned that you want people to be cautious for the next couple of weeks, even though we are seeing some promising numbers lately. And you asked superintendents to look at the child vaccination rate in addition to other things when they're making decisions. But a lot of Kentucky school districts have already made decisions to go to mask optional if they haven't already within the next week or so. What do you make of that decision? Has that come too soon to you?
I do think it's a little too soon. I know they're under a lot of pressure, and we are headed in the right direction. But when it's just stopping to rain, it's still raining outside. So I would ask that everybody who can be patient for the next couple of weeks, because right now, with the level that we're at and the low vaccination rates, I don't believe it's fully safe to go mask optional. Could it be in a couple of weeks? It may well be, especially 3 weeks from now. If you go too early and you end up having to close for 3 or 4 days because of COVID, was it worth it? For me, it's always been about the safety of the kids and my kids who are in public school. But it's also about them not having to miss school because of it. Their school system has been mandatory mask requirements since the beginning of the year, and they haven't missed a day because of COVID. I think that's a pretty special accomplishment that took strong leadership, but the results speak for themselves. And listen, I think that people are trying to be thoughtful. Those that held out as long as they can, I appreciate what they did. I would really ask folks that can to wait these next couple weeks, because once you're in a really good place, then it's going to be a lot safer for our kids. Karen Czar, WKY.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Rachel. Governor, you mentioned the slowing vaccination pace. How concerning is that, considering mask recommendations are expected to lift or shift soon? And what is the current status of the National Guard at hospitals? Thank you.
National Guard is, I think, where we were last week, 300 and something. We may have gotten down in the 200s. It's when hospitals tell us they no longer need them. So we'll get you that exact number. What was the other question? Karen, can you repeat the first part for me?
Yes, you mentioned the slowing vaccination pace. How concerning is that, considering recommendations are going to shift?
It's expected. It's what we saw. It's what we have seen in every part of the pandemic since we have had vaccines. When we're in a spike, vaccinations go up. When we're in a decline, vaccinations go down. As long as we don't continue to decline from where we are right now, which is really where we were before Omicron hit, then we are making slow and steady progress. And it gets harder and harder the more people you vaccinated, right? It's a good problem to have, because it means more people have gotten vaccinated. I think we need to be just as focused on boosters for those that have gotten their first 2 shots as we do trying to get the last remaining folks to get vaccinated. We also have a number of people, though, that have gotten Omicron that weren't vaccinated, that have survived, that can't get vaccinated for a certain period of time, or they suggest that you wait a certain length of time after having the virus. So, that's going to slow things down a little bit too. So, not worried. I will tell you when I get worried. That would be when we hit a 2-digit instead of a 4-digit number on what we see each and every day. Debbie Yetter, Courier Journal.
Hi, Governor. I wondered if on another topic you could speak to the decision today to disqualify Medina Spirit as the 21 Derby winner, and also your thoughts about the performance of the horse racing commissioner and horse racing commission, and whether they could have been a little more provided more information about this as the process went along.
I think the Horse Racing Commission stuck to the processes that were in place, that had been set up for this type of thing that we hope never occurs. And to change a process once something has happened because it's not fast enough is the wrong thing to do. I think that they made the decision that they think is right. I think every decision maker at this point has made the same decision. And the most important thing for the integrity of the sport was for them to get it right. I'm sure that there will be other appeals from here, but the commission and the sport set certain things that you cannot have in your system as a racehorse on race day. And it appears here that whether it was intentional or unintentional, that was violated. And they've enforced their regulations. Corinne Boyer, WEKU.
Hi, Governor. I have 2 questions. Lots of people, particularly seniors, have reached a point where their boosters are starting to wear off. What are they supposed to do since a second booster hasn't been approved yet? And then Kentuckians are already struggling to pay electric bills. And I'm hearing that people are being billed hundreds and hundreds of dollars more than they usually would be. What can your administration do anything to address this?
On electric bills, I would ask people who are struggling to pay them to look at the 2 programs that we have, one for renters and now one for homeowners that come through coronavirus aid from the federal government. They are aimed at keeping everyone in their homes, even if it is just now occurring, even if it's driven by rising prices for other issues. One program has been out for a while, administered by Louisville, Lexington, and us for the rest of the state. The second is one that we were just approved of on the homeowner side. You can get help with rent moving forward. You can get help with utilities going forward and backwards. And while I'll answer the second question, we'll see if we can get those up. Otherwise, we'll post them on social media. For seniors, another round of boosters has not been approved in the United States at this point. If there is concern that there is waning immunity, take those extra steps. Remember, these are all layered mitigation tactics, right? Your level of immunity through your vaccinations and boosters are one defense. Wearing a mask, especially when you are indoors and in crowds, is a second defense. Making decisions about where to go on any given day, how many different things with how many different people that are out there is yet another part of that decision-making process. So what I'd say to those seniors who are a little concerned that they have waning immunity after their booster, look through your total exposure, look through your total risk. As compared to March the 6th, we now know so much about this virus, even with variants, with an ability to really think through all the defenses that you have versus where the virus is at the moment. Corinne, we will get you both websites and contact information for our Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund. And the second one is the Team Kentucky Homeowners Assistance Fund, I believe. Both are available for those that are struggling. Significant amount of dollars available in both. All right, that's it for today. Thank you all very much.